Well, hello everybody, Tim W. Rago here, games, movies, and vlogs. How the hell is everybody? And welcome to the final episode of Paleo Files Reviews KONGATHON here, and I'm joined by Instagram follower, fellow collaborator, and fellow creature obsessed.
How's it going, folks? Jurassic World Monsterverse here. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to another review. And finally, we're out of the Kongathon for good, so we can move on to bigger things.
And this time,
dare I say it, better things. Not better in a way saying that Kong is not better than anything else, but better in a way that there's other things that I've been really looking forward to, more so, just to get into.
yeah, exactly. And this time, Kong, we have seen the King of Skull Island go from 2 black and white stop motion movies to American Toho films, well, to 1 Toho movie, to 2 American Toho films, to a great love letter done by Peter Jackson, and now we come to the Monsterverse, which in all honesty is honestly the best cinematic universe since the Toho-verse back in the show era.
And it's, what the hell was that?
What the hell was what?
That noise. What was that?
I have no what noise. It did anybody comment down below if you're hearing if you heard what James just heard?
I just heard a really weird noise. It sounded like an animal growling in the background or something.
Wait, was it from my room or yours?
I don't know. I'm asking you if you heard it.
I did not hear it. Comment down below if any of y'all heard what my boy just heard.
It's probably one of those dogs from Ghostbusters or something.
Oh yeah, those freaking. Okay, who brought the dog? Yes, I had to make that joke. Anyways,
let's get back to what we're supposed to talk about.
Yeah, and now, as I was saying, now we come to the Monsterverse, which, for those of you who don't know, is the fictional universe concerning the 4 films that concern Godzilla and a new reimagining of King Kong. And King Kong is the movie, is the creature we're focusing on here. And we have his last solo Kong movie, Kong Skull Island, that came out in the year 2017. And to start off, it's so weird that, you have King Kong 1976, right? It took place the year in that decade. It's a really weird movie. But then you have a Kong movie that takes place in the 70s, and it's not a weird movie.
I know, we were saying that, we were talking about that, and, you bring up a really strong point here, because the 1970s, we've seen, because you and I, we've seen a lot of 1970s sci-fi films and horror films, and the 1970s was a wacky time, man. It was
exactly, and especially when I mentioned, during our Kong 76 review, when there was a lot of Italian movie producers and a lot of Italian movie directors that the movies that came out during the 70s, mostly in horror, it was a lot of horror movies with some creature movies trying to be horror films. It's all a bunch of weird shit. It's all a bunch of weird ass movies. And Kong 76, it was ambitious. It was a very ambitious movie, but it falls into that category, sadly.
It had that ambition, but it just didn't work.
The way they were hoping.
Yeah, and it just didn't work out the way it hoped it would.
So knowing that, it's so interesting that, that Kong Skull Island here, it takes place, in that time period, but it's not weird. It's not a weird movie. That's the really odd thing about it is the time period that it takes place. That's the really weird.
Everything is more or less normalized here. And I want to be careful using that word because for people back in the 70s, all that wacky, oddball sort of stuff that they did, that was normal to them. So, but to us,
it
But
feels
to us
off.
now, it's sort of not in an offensive way. It's slightly off-putting because I'm like, you look at it and you look back on that time and you're like, we used to live like that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. And one thing that I do love about this movie is, you know, if you look back on history, right? Like, you know, when you look at the MonsterVerse, and sorry, if anyone hears any odd noises, like that's my phone. No, that's my phone notifying me of shit. So I'm sorry about that. But when you look at history, right? When you look at movies, like with the MonsterVerse, like Godzilla 2014 was the first movie made of the MonsterVerse, but you know, Kong Skull Island takes place in 1973. That's way before the events of Godzilla. So if you look at it, Kong was the first monster, just like how he was in, you know, in the movies. Like, Kong came out in 1933, and then Godzilla came out in 54, and then look at Kong in the MonsterVerse. He's 1973, and Godzilla's 2014. So, it's kind of like this nice history parallel here that they got that they got going.
I'm gonna say, like, it is. It's a very nice historic parallel.
And the one weird thing is, you know, I love it when movies do this. I always love it when film, and a big example of this is Transformers, Bayformers. I really don't like it when people call it that, but for the sake of this, I'm gonna call it that because that's what everyone knows it as. But when you look at the Bayformers movies, especially number 3, when you look at Transformers Dark of the Moon, the opening of that movie has actual footage, like actual historical footage in it, and this movie, and Kong Skull Island does the same thing in the entire opening credits. Like, you have all of actual war footage and actual, like, presidential hearings and shit that were from World War II up to the year 1973. And I love movies that do that. It takes actual events in history but relates them to the main plot of the movie. You know, and because the whole thing.
No, I get it. Yeah. And I fully agree with that as well. I full on agree with that.
And the whole thing is. Oh, sorry.
No, you go. No, I want you to finish.
No, and also, like, it builds up on Monarch, which is the monster hunting the government organization that looks for the Titan, looks for, like, Godzilla and King Kong here. And this movie kind of builds up more with that lore that was established in Godzilla, and then here you got Kong they build up on Monarch's, like, agency and its role in looking all over the world for more of the Titans. And then for the sake of this movie, you know, they find a newer, bigger version of Skull Island here. And one thing to really start off with is the opening. The opening of this movie, for those who don't know, you know, spoilers, you've all been warned.
You had a little critique about it with the opening.
I did. The opening was okay. The opening, when the movie starts, like, you see the logos, like the film logos, but you hear sounds of World War II planes, you know, shooting each other. Like, you hear the machine gun noises. I honestly wish that we could have seen those planes. Like, that would have been a nice, cool action sequence to start the movie. Like, instead of hearing it, I wish they would have shown it. Like, that's the part that was kind of off-putting with me, was where's that scene? Like, why couldn't we see 2 World War II planes shooting each other? Like, seriously, it's World War II. Immerse the audience a little more into that, instead of just hearing it behind the film logos.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, actually.
Yeah, but the rest of that opening is great. Like, you have, you know, these 2 fighter pilots who, it's so crazy. Like, can you just imagine being, you know, those 2 pilots, right? Away from your squadrons, away from wherever the fuck you were, you know, just chasing each other this entire time. Like, you can tell these 2 wanted to kill each other so bad that they weren't near not another person, not another plane, not a warship, none of that. Like, they chased each other so damn far. And then they both just land on this random beach. Well, it's Skull Island's beach, but but when you see the beginning, this is random beach. I did laugh at how I think it was Marlowe. And also another thing about this review, folks, is just like every other movie in the MonsterVerse, there's a movie novelization where it adds a lot more detail.
There's a lot in the novelization I want to bring up as we go along.
And yeah, we're going to be mentioning this. We're going to be mentioning that too, because the novelization is actually canon with the MonsterVerse. So we're going to be bringing up bits of the novelization here to add more context to what the movie was showing, just so people would so all y'all would understand it better. And the bit where you just see the dude falling from the sky, like you just like that thing was like, ah! That was Marlowe. I found out in the novelization that was Marlowe. That was Hank Marlowe falling, and the Japanese dude Gunpei, he was still in his plane, and I don't know why, just that sound effect and the way he was falling was funny to me. I know I should not really have been laughing at that, but just the sound and the way it looked was kind of funny. Was actually kind of funny to me. But what do you think of like the whole opening thing? Like, it's two soldiers that were so determined to just kill each other. Like, they just get in this whole jungle chase and they get in this fist fight on top of this cliff. And then they get this. What'd you ever think, like, didn't it feel more like it wasn't this stylized movie fight? It was like, this is actually how people fight. Like, this is how soldiers would be fighting on a battleground someplace. Like, it didn't feel like a stylized movie fight. It actually felt normal. Like, it felt like that's really what a fight looks like.
Well,
for trained soldiers, I mean.
Well, I mean, like I agree with you with the first part, with you saying that it would have been better with the opening sequences, what we see with the titles that we see to World War II, Second World War aircraft dogfighting it out. But with the rest of what you said, I didn't really care for it because, I'm just not interested in all that. It's not my style, so I choose to, just whenever something like happens in a monster film, and in this case in a MonsterVerse film, I just tend to zone out and drift off to my little world until something actually important to the film happens. So
that's actually what a lot of people say about.
Oh, really?
That's what a lot of people actually say about monster films. Creature movies in general is, people come to watch movies like this, and it's also movies like Pacific Rim and watching a Godzilla movie. The monsters are the real stars of the show, and you're sitting there waiting for what the damn thing advertises. But this movie, dude, 2.5 minutes in, Kong shows up.
Oh, they wasted no time
They didn't. Yeah, they get you like right into like Kong's island. Like they get you right on Skull Island, and all of a sudden you just see these giant hands just slam on the ground, and Kong's face is obscured in shadows, but you can tell it's him by his vocalizations, the fact that he's covered in hair. Even against the sun, you clearly can tell who it is. So I just love the fact that they show him like right off the bat, like 2.5 minutes in they show him. And one interesting thing I got to bring up is like, they said in 1973 that Kong was 104 feet. What do you ever think 30 years before that? Like I think he's got to be like 70 something feet. Probably.
He would have been something like that. He would have been around the same size Kong was in the Gilliman duology, in
he could have probably like 50 or so, like 50 or 60 feet.
55, 60 feet.
Yeah, he could have been
maybe even taller than that.
Yeah, but it was just so crazy how I just love that they show him, and then we just cut to like you know, more like all gathering the. You ever notice, like, when it comes to monster movies, you ever notice, or creature movies really, you ever notice that when they gather all the main characters, it takes a while, you know, for them to do it. But in this movie, they do it fast. Like, the movie knows what you're there to see, and it hurries up and gets there. Like, the movie rushes, pretty much. It hurries up, and I'm telling all y'all right now, John Goodman's character, Bill Randa, is like my favorite character in this whole movie. Like, I love Bill Randa. I always love John Goodman in any movie he's in.
He's easily one of the most interesting human characters in the Monsterverse. There's so much more to him that meets the eye. And, you know, it's unfortunate, you know, that this was his only appearance in the film, and we'll get to what happens to him eventually. No spoilers, you know, ahead. So
yeah,
I'm trying to hold myself back here.
Yeah, what do you call it? In the novelization, they actually explain that Bill Randa's character. They say in the novelization they said that, you know, when he was in the service. They say he was in the military, and he always was reading books on mythology. He was always the nerd of the group, and he never really hung out with, you know, any soldiers while they were out having drinks. He was at a library. Like, yeah. So, and he would always be looking a lot of this up. And
that's something us that we would do, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So he's, honestly, for a creature fan, he is the most relatable character out of this whole movie. Yeah. Like, he's honestly the most relatable character. What'd you ever think of Houston Brooks? Like, his pretty much his right-hand man, in a way, throughout, you know, the half the movie that he's in.
Well, like I said, like, anytime you're going to ask me this question, it's probably going to be the same answer. Like,
you're just waiting for waiting for the bullshit to stop.
Yeah, just like, you know, just get the human, well, not drama, but like just the human stuff
out of the way.
Introductions, I want to say, sorry. Human introductions out of the way, just get into the real good shit, you know?
Yeah, and actually what's kind of funny is, for those who don't know, there's a actor...
I will say, though, with Houston Brooks, though, like, even though I don't really have much to say about him in this movie, I do like him as a character in the Monsterverse overall, because you see him
a lot.
You see him everywhere. You see him in King of Monsters, where he's aged up a little. You see him in the
No, he's in the novelization as well for King of the Monsters, and then he's in the
graphic novels. I meant to say.
He is, yeah. Yeah, so that character shows up. He plays a big part later on Godzilla's side of the Monsterverse.
It's a shame we didn't get to see him in GVK. I mean,
that would have been dope if he was in GVK. Like, that actually would have been awesome. But
he would have been around somewhere.
Exactly. But you know,
What if he was retired? Maybe he's retired now.
Actually, no, he did retire in Skull Island: Birth of Kong. Houston Brooks actually did retire in the year 20. He retired in 2012, and then in 2019, when Godzilla and all the other Titans were waking up because of Ghidorah, they called him back into they got him back into service for a little bit until that shit was ending. But what do you call? For those who also don't know, for those who have seen the Netflix Dahmer show, actor Richard Jenkins, who plays Dahmer's father, Lionel, plays in Kong Skull Island here as Senator Al Willis. And one thing I love about the novelization is that they do mention that Bill Randa and Senator Willis actually knew each other when they were in college. Like, they had this there's like 2 pages in the novelization describing like those two have history. Like, they went to college together and shit, and it's so crazy. Like, they should have done that in this movie, but then we're introduced to it. Then we're introduced to the soldiers, and I love the military characters in this movie. Like remember what we were saying about King Kong Lives, where the military in creature films are made to look like assholes, even though they're not really, in real life, they're not assholes at all.
Yeah.
But in this movie, they show them right. Like, they do...
Oh, no,
they do these military characters so good. Like, you were saying this while we were watching the movie, actually. You said, like, when you're in the service, you're joining a family. Like, you end up being part of this really large family.
Yeah. You're basically already just a part of one extended family. You come from of many siblings, you know?
Yeah, in this movie...
They always have your back, and they always look out for you.
Yeah, in this movie, really...
And that's exactly what this film set out to do, you know?
It does, because you look at all the interactions, like, just the introductions of the military characters, the main ones, they sit around, they bullshit, you know, it's so good to watch. Like, it is so good to see military characters that are not assholes for once.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you've got... the one...
I mean, even with Colonel Packard, you know, even though he's you know, meant to be this, you know, like how every other army general has been portrayed in every other giant monster movie as a straight up
hard ass. Yeah.
Like a hardened piece of shit, you know, like, he is that, but you empathize with him. You feel empathy for him because of what these people have done to him over the... I don't know how long he was serving in...
They never explained how long he was in the... They never explained how long he was in the service.
I know the Vietnam War only lasted, 13 years or something like that? Well, not only 13 years. I mean, that would have been a very long 13 years.
It was, but, like, But, yeah, you do empathize with Colonel Packard, actually, because...
And you can see he's on the verge, he's on the brink of madness, you know, like...
Well, later on in the movie, he absolutely starts losing his shit. But when you first see him...
He snapped in the movie. He snapped in the movie.
Yeah, but like, when you first see him... Well, it's when you first...
It sort of foreshadows into what he'll be.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It kind of does, because, again, I am bringing up the novelization here, because his introduction is, you know, he's looking around at the base, which is Da Nang, or I think it's pronounced Da Nang, but, which is a real base, I found out. You know, he looks...
Well, most of the places in the Monsterverse,
they are real.
Seem like fictional, but they are very much real.
Yeah, but no, that air base, Da Nang Air Base, is an actual place. Like, that's a real air base, I found out. But you see Colonel Packard, like, he's looking around at everything, and, like, the Vietnam War is over at this point, and, you know, in the novelization, they explained that the office that he was in, they had maps all over the walls, and there were charts on the table, and he was around with other commanders pointing out, you know, where the next mission would be. You know, he got so into being a soldier, and the fact that the war ended, he felt like there was nothing left for him to do. Like, that was the main thing of his character, is that there was nothing... He felt like there wasn't nothing left for him to do with his life.
It wouldn't have ended yet, because this was set in 1973, and I think the Vietnam War ended sometime in, like, 1976, I think. So it would have been another 3 years until the war ended. But I think it was coming to a close.
Yeah, it was coming to a close, and, you know, you can just see on his face, you know, he's sitting in his office, he's trying to chill out, but you can just see that he... You know, the fact that it's coming to an end, and he's just sitting there like, okay, now what the fuck am I going to do with myself?
And you said something, while we were discussing that, watching that scene, you said something along the lines of, like, how he feels like he's, like, being lazy, or he feels like he's being lazy or something.
Yeah, they said, like, in the novelization, he was thinking, like,
because,
you know,
he's, like, not committing to his country, and, you know...
Not anymore, yeah, he's just, like, he's gotten so involved in being a soldier and being in a war zone that being back in the outside world, you know, going back to acting as a civilian, yeah, it's just, like...
It's like normalcy, in a way, you
know,
like,
it's like he can't do normalcy, like, that was his whole thing, he can't do it. He so can't do it, because he's been doing it he's been in war for so long.
And for me, that makes him so relatable for me, because, you know, like, with everything that's been normalized and, you know, all this normalcy, I just can't do it, you know, because like I want to go out there, have an exciting life, and commit myself to that, you know.
Yeah, that was his. Yeah, that does make him relatable. But I think honestly, you like this dude. The Toby something, I can't remember the actor's name. The guy that plays Kong himself and also plays Major Jack Chapman, who I honestly do like that character. He was a very chill dude. You know, for a soldier, he was a really chill character. But it's so funny how what was he trying to be? Trying to be basically the MonsterVerse equivalent to fucking Andy Serkis, because it's like he plays Kong and then he plays a human character. Because remember Andy Serkis did that? He played Kong and then he played a human character, which also dies. So it's just like, so it's so crazy how this guy was so trying to be like a MonsterVerse equivalent to Andy Serkis. I don't know why, I just think it's kind of funny. But then you just see, like, you know, right as everyone was about to go home, all the soldiers were about to, you know, return back here to the U.S., they get called to, as a military escorts for Monarch to go to Skull Island. And, I mean, in all honesty, why wouldn't you? I mean, you're going into a hostile environment, like, wouldn't you want protection, at least?
Oh, no. I mean, they're pros at doing that, you know, they do that sort of thing every single day, so...
Exactly, and then there's a quote, actually, I said this when we were watching it, there's this thing that Bill Randa says when they were going to this nightclub, which I could swear is a real nightclub in Vietnam. Or I think that was in Thailand,
I think it was in Bangkok.
Bangkok, it was in Thailand, it was in Bangkok. Where Bill Randa says, you don't judge a man by where he drinks, only how he holds it. I love that quote because
that is such a true quote.
It is. It's a very it's honestly, it's probably the most relatable thing in the most relatable piece of dialogue in that whole damn movie.
Oh, man, there are a lot of relatable dialogue.
Well, there is, but number one is definitely that, and then we're introduced to. I can't say
that you kept comparing me with.
Oh, this guy. Yeah, the character James Conrad, who, for those, is Loki in the Marvel movies. But, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, we forgot to mention that. Yeah,
a lot of the actors in this movie are from the MCU.
Yeah.
And with James Conrad...
There's a lot of actors here that you would recognize from a lot of comic book films, sci-fi films.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't...
It's got such an impressive cast.
Yeah,
it really does.
The reason why I compared you to this guy, and for those people who live in the UK, or I'm not meaning this offensively, I'm not being a douche, I'm not trying to be an American asshole here.
If you take it offensively, suck it up and stop being a pussy, will you?
Yeah, take it from a fellow British guy.
Yeah, I take it from a fellow like Brit. Just grow some balls and deal with it.
Exactly. Like, seriously, that's the one thing that's missing in this world is telling a fucking joke, you know, as being funny. And I kept comparing my boy to this character because, number one, Tom Hiddleston's British, and he's a tracker, so it's like, dude, he's a Brit that goes out in the wild, that likes being out in the friggin' wild, and James,
I go out hiking and, you know, going to like these outdoorsy nature sort of places all the time.
Exactly.
You know,
that's why I kept making
keep my health in check and keep myself fit.
That's why I kept making that comparison.
I don't see much this guy.
Exactly. So, and I just love like his introduction, like an uncharted island. Let me list all the ways you're gonna die. Like, damn, dude, nice vote of confidence there. Shit, like nice vote of fucking confidence. I mean, it's true, but it's just like the way he presents himself. Just the way he I mean, I love his introduction where he beats up a few guys. He beats up a few like gangsters or whatever they were with a frickin'... He basically goes John Wick on their asses by beating them up with a frickin' pool stick.
Oh, is it called a snooker? It's like a snooker stick or something like that.
Okay, I've honestly never heard the term. I never even knew that had a name. To be honest, I never knew.
I thought you guys called it snooker.
I just call it a pool stick because that's what it is. It's a stick you play pool with.
It's actually called a cube. It's called a cube.
Really? But I just love, like, they get all the characters together, and then you got, last one to mention is Brie Larson, who plays a anti-war photographer, and so you get all these characters, get on the ship, like every reboot of Kong, get all the characters, get on the ship, and I'm sorry, this is the most cliched movie I've ever watched, because it plays out like a 1950s B movie. It really does. Like, I think that's the point. What it was trying to go for was get back into the spirit of that and make it fun. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the whole thing.
Make yourself feel like that you're still watching a Kong movie. And
exactly, like this movie pulls off a lot of shit. And then one character, and I've said this a lot while we were watching this movie. Okay, John Ortiz, I can't stand his character in this movie. His character is such a bitch. It's such a whiny little bitch. I could not stand him whatsoever. Like, and because I don't know what it is.
Throughout the whole film, he's just a little.
He was bitching throughout this entire movie, and what's crazy is even the novelization doesn't even like him. Where when they do his introduction, Bill Randa is standing in a corner, and he literally says, he does the thoughts in his head like, wow, way to bore a room before anything actually starts. Like, dude, even the novelization didn't like him. And I swear, I wanted to slap the shit out of him. Like, I wanted to slap the everlasting shit out of him. And then I love when they get to the island, I love, like, his character, Victor Viennes, he says, like, because the storm looks nasty, we're gonna abort. Like, dude, nothing's even fucking happened yet. And then Bill Randa basically says, like, oh, yeah, I'm sure the Landstown inspector's gonna, yeah, I'm sure that's pretty courageous. And then Victor's like, oh, no, he'll be inspired by my common sense. Like, really, bitch? The fuck? I swear to God, I couldn't stand this character at all. And then, of course, there's no way I'm getting on that helicopter. Very next shot, he gets on the damn helicopter. He gets on the helicopter and he has the look on his face like, fuck my life.
It's like, that meme, it's like, I can't believe you've done this.
Yeah, he does look like that face. He looks like he wants to say to Bill Randa, I can't believe you did this. Like, it does look like that meme.
It's such an understandable, like, it's such a relatable expression. It's like me, on my first day at work, and I'm like, oh, fuck me, here we go.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's pretty much like everyone's day. It's pretty much Monday. It's pretty much like Mondays when you walk into work.
Monday. He's staring at Monday.
Yeah, exactly. And, then, they have the whole thing with the rain. And you said with that rain when the helicopter... Oh, one thing about the helicopters, we were both pointing this out. On the ship, it looked like there was like maybe 6 or 7 choppers. But then when they go towards the island, there's all of a sudden like 15. Like, where'd the other choppers come from?
Yeah, I was confused. I was like, I don't remember seeing this many helicopters before they took off.
Yeah, exactly. I was so confused. I was majorly confused about that. Like, where the...
They just appeared out of nowhere, and I'm like...
They did, you guys come from? Exactly. Like, what? Where? What? Why? Why is there all of a sudden like 15 when the deck of that ship called the Athena?
That made no sense.
That didn't make any sense at all. Like, that was so weird. Like, there were not that many helicopters on that ship.
They just anyway, let's
but
then if we like still think about it, it's going to take up most of the video.
Yeah, exactly. And then you said like flying through that hurricane. I think both you were saying like you would definitely want to do that, like fly through like heavy rain and shit. Like,
the thing about me is that I'm a daredevil. I'm very outgoing and willing to try anything and give anything a chance. Like, I've always wanted to do, like, skydiving and bungee jumping and wing walking and all these, these...
crazy stunts and shit.
Outlandish stunts that, that I probably wouldn't walk away from. but I'd still want to do it.
And I
was saying to my bro as well. I was saying to my bro, like while we were watching helicopters get knocked around by the storm. I would be like, like nudging him and going, "Oh, raise your arms, bro!
Raise your arms." I know that, and I just love like how that scene kind of looked like a little chaotic, and then all of a sudden, paradise. Like, all of a sudden, it just goes to paradise. And what'd you ever think of, like, the look of Skull Island in this movie? Like, it is so... It's just gorgeous, in all honesty. Like, it doesn't look so hellish like Peter Jackson's Skull Island was.
It is, but my only complaint is the same thing I had with Kong 76, which is... where this was filmed.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Because a lot of they filmed in a lot of locations for this movie. Like, one of them... they filmed
a lot in my home state of Queensland and Vietnam.
And it's actually cool, they really made a big deal about the fact that they filmed in Vietnam, because Vietnam was never presented this way in a movie until now. So it's actually good that country...
I think it has been a couple of times, but like you said, not like in the way it's presented here.
Exactly, so, like it being presented in this way was actually a big deal for Vietnam when this movie came out, and Vietnam,
like with many Asian countries, are on my list of countries I've always wanted to visit. If I ever got the chance to explore the world, Vietnam has always been on my list. The only places I've been to in that part of the world in Southeast Asia are only, I think, Bali and Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. And the next places I really want to visit most are Bangkok and Vietnam. And that's what I got to say about that.
And it's so crazy how, you can tell this movie was actually filmed like on different locations, and that's actually a cool thing about this is the movie was filmed in different locations, but it makes Skull Island like this very diverse environment. You have the shots where it's in Vietnam, and then they did film in Hawaii a few times. Like there's a few shots where you can tell that they went to Hawaii for a little while. And then there is the Queensland bit where you're saying like the paper forest scene. Or the scenes that were in the paper forest?
Yeah, we get a lot of those around the more temperate regions of Australia, in the more southern states, like southern Queensland and places like that, where it's more of a temperate sort of climate. So, but here, I live in the far north Queensland. I live in what we call the wet tropics. So, it is seasonal, but it's seasonal in only terms of like having a wet season and a dry season, rather than have like several seasons in between, like you guys have in the States.
Yeah. So, but that I just love, like, it's all in the editing is what makes Skull Island here like so diverse when it comes to environment. And
I know I said that, even though that's my one little critique I have for this film, but with this movie, it goes more all out to make it feel like Skull Island rather than Kong 76 did with its version. So
it did. It brings you back to Skull Island being like this. There's no other environment like this on this planet. Like that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing with this. And then they fly in. Back to the plot. Like they fly in and they start doing their thing. Monarch starts trying to prove the Hollow Earth theory, which is the whole thing with the Monsterverse, and all of a sudden, everything is going good, and then there's the epic soundtrack that they have for this movie. They have Black Sabbath's Paranoid playing over this loudspeaker kind of thing, over this loudspeaker, and you hear it. Everything's going good. All of a sudden, here comes this tree, just slams into a helicopter, like
that's definitely
on
a King
point.
Kong reference.
It probably was, actually. That definitely is a King Kong Escapes reference, but at least Kong actually hits something this time, because in Escapes, he throws trees, but he misses. Like, he doesn't even hit any of the helicopters. He throws them, but he misses. In this movie, it's so crazy in this movie. Like, everything's going good. All of a sudden, you just see this tree just fly out of the ground and hit one of the choppers.
He threw it like a dart. It's like a dart. It must have been like a dart to him.
Oh, probably, because it hit that chopper, like, dead on. Like, that was like a direct hit. And then all of a sudden,
bullseye hit.
That was a straight up bullseye hit. And then all of a sudden, like, the chopper next to that one, you just see Kong just whack that out of the sky. And I just like the weird bit of editing where a dude, he falls off the chopper and he falls into Kong's mouth. But the editing is so funny how it's like, the way that they explained the dude got eaten was it cut to a dude eating a sandwich. Like, you just see this guy falling into Kong's mouth, all of a sudden, boom, cuts to a guy eating a sandwich.
I've always loved it when, like, TV shows and movies do that, you know, it gives you some perspective
of what happened.
But so what happens afterwards, and it doesn't, you know, directly show you, like, the aftermath of what happens to the person you've just seen get brutally, you know, killed.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, you have Kong's, like, you know, they do this build-up, again, Kong always gets this build-up where, you know, he's silhouetted in front of the sun, and you see all the characters. Yeah, that's the funny shot. Yeah, and honestly, it feels so much like a regular giant monster movie where it's like you have the monster and the military are, like, coming towards it. You know, a lot of, like, monster movie posters show that. In this movie, is that one shot is a poster by itself. Like, you can so make a poster. I think some of the posters were like that. And I just love the look on every character's face that they're seeing this big-ass animal in front of them. Like, you can tell that, holy shit, what did we just get ourselves into kind of situation. And then they all start shooting at him. They all start unloading every bullet they have on him, and all it does is piss him off. Like, all it does is piss him off, and then he just starts knocking the helicopters out of the sky and stomping on people and throwing people up in the air. They're like, dude, he has a serious body count in this movie that's worse than 1933. Like, this Kong, you know, this Kong is like, he acts a lot like the 1933 Kong, where he's a monster, where he's a straight-up movie monster again. You know, he's this... Yeah, at first he is, yeah. He just comes up like this giant, aggressive, like, giant monster that lives on this friggin' island and is just like, yeah, you trespassed on my turf, bitch. You're fucking dead. So he makes all the characters scatter all over the place, and then, in the meantime, you know, we're introduced to more creatures with, you know, two different groups. Like, you got the soldiers, and then you got... Then you've got the fact
that they did that. They show us, you know, two separate journeys with all our characters, you know, from their perspective. Sorry, tongue-tied. From their perspectives is what I meant to say. You know, we get two different, you know, separate journeys from each side, and we're seeing both sides. And they get an equal amount of screen time, and it just works perfectly.
It does, and I love the fact that, you know...
Did that come out right? Sorry if that didn't make any sense.
It did. No, it did make sense. No, it did make sense because you see, like, how every character acts, like, you know, how every character... You see how every character really is in this situation, like, what they're... And I just love the fact... And yes, we made this...
What I'm trying to say is I'm trying to simplify it down a little. So what I meant to say was, is like, what I like most about this movie is before all the characters, you know, they meet up again, because, you know, with what Kong did, you know, knocking all the helicopters out of the sky, you know, they're scattered throughout different places, like, throughout the island. And with, like, the group is now separated in half. And I like the fact that the movie focuses on both groups.
It does, yeah. And that's actually in one...
And they're set off on their path, you know, to meet directly up again, and, you know... Anyway, I'll let you talk again now.
Yeah, that's one thing that I do love about... That's one thing I love about this movie as well is, you know... And along the way, you get to see how they treat the island itself. Like, because how they treat the animals. And one great example is... Two great examples, actually, is... There's the scene with the Skur Buffalo, which, honestly, you even said it. That thing, despite how big it is the most adorable thing on that frickin' island. I was even asking you.
It's just a move now.
Like, I would want to pet it. I swear to God, I would so want to pet the thing. I would walk up to a skur buffalo and just pet it. Because it is super adorable. And then you see, like, the one military character, Slithgo, his name is, he raises his gun at it, and then James Conrad slowly puts it down. You know, he slowly lowers it.
And he makes him come to realize that
it's an animal.
If we're not posing a threat, then if we're not posing a threat, then it's not going to misunderstand the context of anything, and charge and stomp us into the dirt.
Yeah, and then the thing, it just looks at him, it snorts at him for a bit, and then just walks off. And then you see that's the part that actually gives a shit about the island. But then you have Colonel Packard's side.
I think with that skur buffalo when it was staring them down, it's like, you're cool, buddy. Make your move, bitch.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it probably was doing, because it was just like, dude, you have a gun versus you have a rifle, you have an assault rifle versus a big ass buffalo with horns that can just throw you. All it had to do is to move its head one time, and those horns, whatever you call them, can make you just go flying and die.
They'll strip you. They'll strip you, man. Like. Like, I imagine, like, if you got impaled on there, you'd be just like a rotting, decomposing corpse for days on end on there.
Exactly, like, and then you have, like, Colonel Packard's side going on, like, at the same time. You have, like, the Mother Longlegs scene, which, yes, that's the actual name of those spiders, is called Mother Longlegs.
And some interesting names here.
Yeah, and the thing I love about Skull Island in this movie is that they say, like, every animal, the Titans are pretty much treated like animals, despite being monsters, but every animal here is, like, this perfect camouflage of plant and animal. Like, and the Mother Longlegs...
Almost every animal there is, like, a combination between, like a crossbreed, plant and animal hybrid. It's really, really interesting. Like,
especially the Mother especially
like animals.
They're animals, but they blend in with the environment so damn well that you never know it was there unless it moves, unless something moves.
It's like the animals. I don't really know how to put it in the words exactly, but think of it this way: it's like an animal and a plant, like mutated, evolved alongside each other at the same time. What's that thing called? That it's an evolutionary trait that some species have.
Mimicry, isn't it like mimicry?
It's like a partnership. You know how some animals...
Oh, symbiotic relation. Like the plants and ants, symbiotic relationship?
Symbiotic relationship, that's it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And it's like a symbiotic relationship between plant and animal. Both life form benefit from each other by being attached to one another.
And the Mother
it's like two life forms in one animal.
Yeah, and the Mother Longlegs is a really great example of that, because you see the military characters just walking through this the forest of bamboo, and then all of a sudden one soldier gets impaled, and what it looks like it's a piece of bamboo. Like, why is there a bamboo tree going straight through this person? Well, then the camera pans up, and then you notice it's a giant fucking spider. It's a giant spider. It's a giant spider. Like, you're sitting there looking at it like, oh my god, it's a giant spider. And then, we get this cool scene of this Mother Longlegs getting taken down by the soldiers, and, it's so crazy how Colonel Packard, man, I don't like the way the thing dies. Like, Colonel Packard just walks up, and I literally counted how many shots he shoots this thing in the head with. It's like literally five
times.
It was like 5 times, and it's like, dude, after twice the thing's dead already. Like, dude, you don't need to... Like, I think already, like, you're seeing in the movie how much he really hates this island. How much Colonel Packard really hates everything this island is. Like, he just hates this island. Like, hates the animals on there. And then I just love, like, how the Mother Longlegs those tendrils that came out of its abdomen Well, that's actually how it eats. It grabs its prey with those things, and then brings them up to the mouth, where it eats them. So you have that, and then we cut back to, Conrad and the others, and then they find the village of the people here called the Iwi.
Iwi village.
And the lore behind them is that they were people that were shipwrecked, because all of the structures at the Iwi village are all ships from like different time periods. So the bit of lore that Skull Island has in the MonsterVerse is that every person on this island was shipwrecked, and they're shipwrecked. They're stuck there, But you said, like, it's so weird. You were saying, like, you enjoy the fact that nobody talks. You enjoy the fact that nobody speaks.
Well, the thing is, I'm an introverted person. I'm very introverted, so I prefer, having not many friends and keeping to myself, and just to stay away from people overall. Like, nothing against you, bro. You're fine because like you and I have been like very good friends for close to 2 years now, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been that long already. Fucking hell.
Yes, it has. It actually has.
Yeah, it's always been 2 years of friendship. Fuck. Anyway,
little self-realization there, everybody.
But like these sort of people seem like the type of crowd I would want to hang around with. But as for you, you said it would drive you absolutely nuts.
It would, because I'm just sitting there and I'm like, if I was shipwrecked there, I would try to ask somebody like, okay, like, what do I touch? What do I not touch? And then if people ain't telling me, how the fuck am I supposed to know what the hell's happening here? Like, seriously, I literally, that's why it would drive me up a damn wall. But one thing we gotta praise in this movie, now that, at the Iwi village part, is this art style in this temple. Like, you have these individual...
I don't even know how to find the words to,
describe
to
that.
Together, just to say that. Yeah, just describe that.
Because the way it's done is, like, it's individual little, like, short pillars of rock, but on each thing, there's something painted.
Stony columns, and
there's something painted on each column, but then when the camera turns just at the right angle, it actually has this picture in there, and they tell the story of, of the Iwi village and how they came to worship Kong and everything, or Kong species anyway, Titanis Kong. So it tells the story of the Iwi, and I love that they do that. And also, at the same time, you have John C. Reilly is the one doing all this exposition.
Is like everyone's favorite character in the MonsterVerse.
It's so weird because he's been stuck there for almost 29 years, and he's so goofy. Like, there's having a comic...
I'm surprised he's not on the verge or on the brink of losing his sanity, because...
Oh, I would have thought he would have already.
He reminds me of myself when I'm hyped up on, like...
Red Bull.
Like binging down a lot of Red Bull, and, it's like... I don't know, he's an interesting character.
He really is, because he all of a sudden just randomly shows up. He randomly shows up, like, the main characters... Well, the main characters are like, you have all these natives surrounding them with spears, and then all of a sudden you hear, whoa, 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 whoa. And then here's John C. Reilly, like, I know they said his name in the opening credits, and you're sitting here wondering, why is he in this movie? Well, now you know why he's in this movie. Like, he just and I just love, there's this one line where he goes, you are more beautiful than a hot dog and a beer, but you're real, right? I love that line. I love, like, his... Oh, and then when they're in the... Oh, and then he says, you probably noticed a lot of weird things on this island. Like, no shit, why do you think we're here? Like, why do you think we're here, dude?
Yeah, he was like, oh yeah, there's a lot out there.
Yeah, exactly. And I love, like... Oh, and then I love his line where they're in...
Speaking of which, like, there's one thing... that while we were talking about the creatures, which we might get more into as we go on, because it has quite a creature list this film does.
It does.
There's several more creatures that I wanted to bring up in the novel that were never mentioned or shown in the film. Like, I haven't even seen concept designs for these creatures. Like, you know, like, one of my favourite things about the behind the scenes for Kong Skull Island is the concept designs for earlier creatures that were going to be included in the film but were scrapped out. And there was this python-looking thing that had a...
it was in the novelization that attacks James Conrad at one point. It was a giant snake. Like, there was this giant snake, and then on top of that, this was supposed to actually be in this movie, but it was cut out, and then it actually became still part of the Monsterverse, just in a graphic novel, where it was a tiger. It was this white tiger with red stripes.
Oh, the holy tigers, yeah, the holy tigers.
With antlers. A tiger with antlers. Like, it was supposed to attack Colonel Packard's men, like, at night. Like, it was supposed to be one or two of these things. But there's that, and then, the comic book series Skull Island, Birth of Kong goes deeper into what kinds of animals are on this island. Like, you have the Death Jackal, which is like a pissed off raptor looking thing.
You have the
and then the Siren Jaw, and then you have the Siren Jaw. The which one?
The Dire Jaw, the Swamp Locust, the
Psycho Vultures. Man. You have the Psycho Vultures, which...
Psycho Vultures.
And and the Siren Jaw is actually, like, one of my favorite creatures because it's literally a giant crocodile. It's like if Deinosuchus had plants on its back.
Yeah, and there's another thing that we forgot to mention regarding Vanda. Like, Vanda says, you know, talking about the mysteries of Skull Island, he even said... There's even talk of a movie crew disappearing here in 1933.
He did. I remember that in the novelization. He mentions that before they get to the island. So it's a nice little thing that they at least mention that. That they mention that.
I'm on this site called Wikizilla right now, and I'm on a page where it's comparing the differences between the movie and the novelization, and I've just found this little part here that goes on. Oh wow! Huh? You know that eerie art scene that we just talked about?
Yeah.
There's more here. The creatures Kong defends Skull Island from are more diverse than just skull crawlers. The eerie paintings depict giant reptilian beast, one with 3 heads, a 50-foot crocodile, snake-like monsters slinking from holes in the ground and snapping towards the sun, web-footed creatures, spikes along their back, spearing bloody humans diving into the ocean surrounding the island.
Well, that's a definite Ghidorah reference. They said a thing with 3 heads. I mean, who else can that be?
That's gotta be like.
That's gotta be Ghidorah, and then they said there's something with spikes on their back. Like, that's definitely Godzilla. That's gotta be Godzilla.
That's got me wondering. That's got me wondering now. Did the ancestral Kongs fight Ghidorah at one stage,
or did they meet Ghidorah at one point? Like, or did they end up seeing him, or because
it says. A giant reptilian beast, one with 3 heads. That's Ghidorah!
That is Ghidorah. That's definitely Ghidorah. And, you know, what's actually one crazy thing, though, when it comes to, when it comes to the diversity of this island is just, you know, oh, and then there's also, and I know in GVK, in the novelization for GVK, they literally explain that Godzilla actually has Iwi mythology, where they say there's this being that ate a star, and from that star
they gave him his own name as well, didn't they?
They did, but I can't really remember the name of it. I can't remember the name of it.
I'll look it up when we get to the end credit. When we discuss the end credits, I'll look that up and then we can talk about it.
Oh yeah, and And anyways, back to the plot of the movie. Like, a lot, the thing about the Monsterverse, folks, is that there's a lot of lore. This movie has a lot of lore and a lot of world building. Like, this movie does a lot of world building here, and after the, you know, there's the and then you and I were laughing at this line when Victor Vienna's is talking to Hank Marlowe, and Hank Marlowe has he's shaving himself with this really cool looking knife, and he goes, "I'm gonna stab you by the end of the night." and he says it with this smile on his face, which is he just.
I love that part. so much.
He just says it with this. He says it with this big frickin' smile on his face, and the line just comes out of nowhere. Like the line that had to have been improvised.
It's like John C. Reilly improvised it.
He had to have made that line up. There is no frickin' way that was scripted. There is no way that was scripted.
It's the way he was doing it. It just, I don't know.
It just comes off as like, I don't know whether to call it creepy or funny. Like, the line is funny, but it's just the way he says it. I don't know whether to call it, like, are you trying to creep people out or what, dude? Like, it just... Like, seriously, can you just imagine being there and somebody says, I'm gonna stab you by the end of the night?
I would laugh it off. Like, I would shrug it off as if like a harmless joke, but at the same time, I'd still be concerned, you know, I'd give him a sideways look, you know?
Like, dude, like, look over your shoulder, like, sleep with one eye open, dude.
Yeah,
but,
it kind of reminds me of when me and my high school buddies went on a camping trip. It's like, I'll save that for another time, but it's a really
crazy experience.
Yeah.
But,
it's so weird. I don't even know where to begin with it. But anyway, back to the review.
Yeah. Yeah, but, so you have all this going on, and, you know, and the whole entire thing with, Colonel Packard, like, you know, the whole thing is, Jack Chapman, he gets the most separated from, like, everybody. He's by himself most of this movie, and most of the time he's by himself, and you just see him, like, just encounter all these things. Like, you see Kong fighting the Meyer squid at one point, which is a remake of the scene from King Kong versus Godzilla where Kong fought the giant octopus.
Speaking of that scene, I'm speaking of the Meyer squid as well. Like, you know how the group start getting that boat working?
Yeah.
Not too long, shortly afterwards, in a novelization, a Meyer squid actually attacked the boat.
It did. There was like a few. I remember that part. There was like a scene where like these tentacles were coming out of the water, and they had to fight them. Yeah, there was. Yeah, I remember that. I do. Yeah, I remember that.
With Kong fighting the Meyer squid, you know how he kills it? He just stomps on it.
He curb stomps it. Yeah, and then he starts eating it, which is actually kind of funny. Like, he sits there and he just starts...
It's like, he just calms right down. I'm like, have you got, like, a split personality disorder or something? You just went from, you know, acting all, like, over the top aggressive and you're roaring, and now all of a sudden you just calm right down and you're just having lunch. Like,
but that is actually kind of funny. Like, he does have, like, this weird personality complex where, like you said, he fights this thing, is all monstrous, and then he just starts eating it like...
He's just all chill.
Exactly. Then he just walks away. Then he just starts walking away. He grabs the thing and starts walking away with it. Like, I would have loved to see another scene where he's eating it more, where he's just chomping on it a little bit more. I honestly would have loved to see that. And then, like, you know, you go through more... But like with the fight in the novelization, it says here, Kong kills the Meyer squid by biting into the mantle and tearing it apart. So he essentially just molded it. Damn. But, and that honestly would have been cooler in the movie if they would have shown him, like, biting the head and ripping a chunk of that off. Honestly, like, this movie is pretty violent, but I wish it, with the creature scenes, I wish it was actually a little more violent, because it's monsters. Like, wouldn't you want to see, like, more monster violence? Like, seriously. Like, wouldn't you want to see just a little bit more, like, monster on monster violence here?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And then we cut to, like, okay, the boat that they have, I love the fact that it's made out of plane parts. Like, it's like this Franken boat, basically, where it's different plane parts stitched together. Like, honestly, I gotta say, that's pretty creative. I'm not gonna lie. I do give props for creativity on that. Taking plane parts and turning it into a boat. And then it's like... Then, in the boat bit, Victor Vienna's finally fucking dies. And it's just like, oh my god, finally he shut up. Like, you have these little creatures, the leaf wings. Yeah, the leaf wings, which is very surprising how strong they are for for an animal that's like the size of a roll of paper towels, which is like a foot tall. Like, dude,
I do
they're pretty
like,
strong
I do
for a
like
little guy.
how, with the leaf rings, I do like how they're like a recurring creature in the Monsterverse. Now you see them at the end of King of the Monsters, you know, where they're flying by. Where there's a flock of them gliding by Godzilla right at the end. It's not very notable to make out, but if you have good enough vision, then yeah, you can definitely see them.
And well, then also you see him in the beginning of GVK. No, you see him in the very beginning of GVK also. And then
it's kind of weird. In GVK, they look differently colored. Like here in Skull Island,
they're like blue and yellow. They're like a blue, yellow, and reddish kind of thing.
Yellow, green, and camouflage sort of colors. Then Hollow Earth, they're like multicolored. They're like a rainbow of colors.
Yeah, and then
they're differently colored.
But it's so crazy how these things are like, they just carry Victor Vienna's off. And then you said, like, you made the joke where he died like a little bitch because he was still holding his briefcase while his arm gets cut off. He died holding that frickin' briefcase still.
He died holding a fucking briefcase.
And then also, another thing that was easily noticeable is when they were fixing the boat before they got it to work. He's all happy and shit that the boat worked. It's like, dude, you didn't even do shit. What are you happy for? Like, what the hell are you happy about? You didn't even do shit. You didn't even help. Like, seriously, little bitch ass, you didn't even help. So when he dies, there's that, and then you have, like, all the characters reunite, both groups reunite, like, halfway into this movie, and then they cross through, and also, one thing I love about the exposition that Marlowe gives is where we're introduced to the Skullcrawlers, and I love the scenes with Kong by himself where they show, what he deals with, like, the type of life that he's living. On the island, and you see the Skullcrawlers, and dude, they look terrifying. For an animal that size, they look pretty damn scary. I'm not gonna lie. Like, they do kind of remind me of orca whales, actually, because orcas have these giant black spots in front of around their eyes, and you think that's the eye, but no, their actual eye. You really have to look for it.
Have you ever had that thing, like, when you were a kid? Have you ever thought, like, looking at orcas, like, in nature documentaries and animal encyclopedias?
No, I've seen one. No, I've seen one in real life. I've seen one in real life, dude, at SeaWorld.
If it's at SeaWorld, then
it was Shamu. Yeah, I've seen Shamu in real life, dude, when I was a kid.
Is he even still alive?
Actually, I don't know. You don't really hear about him anymore, but I think he passed away at one point. But with killer whales, though, they just have.
Have you ever looked at an orca though, and you ever thought that those white patches are actually their eyes?
I thought the black patches were its eyes. I literally was thinking the big black spots those were its eyes, and then come to find out, it has the actual eye is hidden, kinda. It's actually hidden where you'd have to really look for it. You'd have to really be looking for it.
The skullcrawlers are basically
reptilian
version.
Reptilian orcas.
Yeah, they're reptilian orcas.
And their introduction is very you see one eating a skur buffalo, and then Kong basically called it out. Like, you ever notice that? It roared at the dead carcass, and then the Skullcrawler crawls up from behind the skur buffalo, and then another one sneaks up on Kong from behind, and then he takes
so many memes out there of that. Yeah, when your dog is waiting for you to drop your food and all that.
Yeah, exactly. And I just love, and do you ever notice the heavy punching noise that they gave when Kong literally smacks one? He literally punches one of the Skullcrawlers, and there's this loud punching sound. Like, they actually add in a punching sound. They add in a punching sound effect, and then Kong just curb stomps one of them. But I think in the novelization they said that he slammed one of them into a mountain or some shit. Like, he slammed the other one into a mountain, and he curb stomps one, and then the other one he just slammed into one of the hills or something like that. Like, apparently, that fight scene I think was longer, if I'm not mistaken, in the novel.
I mean, in the novel here, I'm just
browsing through it here.
Yeah, I'm browsing through some of it here, and I've just gotten up to a part where it says, "Packard watches Kong trigger a rock slide to bury a Skullcrawler alive."
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, that was it. Yep. But then, we get through, and there's the Skullcrawler scene in the valley the big mass grave where it shows Kong's parents. I just love the fact that, this movie just has, and you said you like the very, actually, I think we both said we like this. Like, the Skullcrawlers they're like this combination of different reptiles. Like, you have this monitor lizard looking thing, and with a
chameleon tongue. And,
exactly, and I just love, like, people just get snatched up and eaten, including Bill Rando, which really sucks. I cannot believe that happens to him. And
they wasted him, man.
And the MonsterVerse has this trope of, like, every time somebody dies, they go, "Oh shit." Like, they say, shit.
It's a recurring gag.
Yeah, and, this movie does that right before Bill Rando gets snatched.
They better bring that back.
Oh, in the next movie, somebody's gotta say, "Oh shit," right before they just get busted up and killed. And the whole thing about this is, like, this Skullcrawler's just, like, knocking soldiers out of the way left and right, eating them and hitting them with its tail. Like, this thing just, like, doesn't give two shits about who anybody is. It is there to kill, because the backstory, the lore that they give the Skullcrawler, the biology anyway, is the reason why. More of the biology on this thing is, number one, the fact that the animal only has two legs, two limbs really. And
would you say, like, the Skullcrawler, would you say it's more of a quadrupedal animal with only two legs, or a bipedal animal?
I would probably say if it's only got like two legs, I would probably call it a biped, because of the fact that it's only walking on two legs. And
it has, like, the physique of a quadrupedal animal.
Yeah, but the evolutionary thing about that is that,
and the locomotion of one too.
It wouldn't need back legs, because you know how, say your back leg got broke, you'd basically be carrying, like, dead weight?
Yeah.
It only has two legs, so it wouldn't need to worry about that. Like, that's what the thing I love about the Skullcrawler is, that little evolutionary advantage that it has, where it wouldn't need to carry dead weight. It can just, like, keep going. It can just keep running it can just keep moving without a problem. And on top of that, its metabolism is so damn fast that it's constantly starving. Like, this thing has to eat constantly, like a great white, basically. Like, it's like a great white on land. And this thing has to constantly eat.
It's like a combination of so many of the deadliest animals combined and put into one.
It's got the head of an orca. It's got the face of an orca. The tongue of a chameleon. Well, also kind of like a monitor lizard mixed with a chameleon, because you see its tongue flick out like a Komodo. And it's got a tail that's pretty much like a Komodo, because a Komodo's tail it uses like a weapon.
Oh yeah, no, it uses it like a whip. Like if it sweeps at you, sorry. If it swipes at you,
you're screwed. You're basically screwed. And then, they do it the whole.
Don't ever fuck with a Komodo, man. They'll fucking get you.
But the thing is though, it's really cliche how they kill it. Kong, the way Kong killed him was more creative, but in the movie they blow it up. Like, they literally do the cliche thing of, need to get rid of a monster? Oh, just blow it up. And that's literally all they do to it. Like, they couldn't.
And I said this, and you agreed with me on this. Like, I said this near the end of the movie, that I said the novelizations have more going for them than the movies do.
They do, yeah. They do have a lot more. There's, like, a lot more going on. And also, when it comes to, like, and then one thing we gotta point out is the fact that there's a Triceratops skull in this movie. Like, Kong is known. Like, Kong is known for dealing with dinosaurs, and I love the fact that they kind of reference that in this movie by having this Triceratops skull. And Triceratops was not that big. Like, good God, that animal in life had to have been like Baragon size or some shit, because that Triceratops, just from that top that thing would have probably
been like Baragon or Varan sized or something.
That's just that skull alone is like, dude, you can live in that head. Like, you can probably live in that skull, probably.
No, you could make it your shack if you if you were shipwrecked there, you can make that your own personal shack.
Exactly, but I would love to see that, like a Titan-sized dino. Like, I would have loved to see a resident of Skull Island be like this giant 60-foot-long Triceratops or some shit, like this massive Ceratopsian just going around acting like an animal, but when it's threatened, man, facing off a Skullcrawler, that would have been a cool fight scene.
Oh, that would be so sick! I would love to see that.
Yeah, that would have been cool to see. But then it's like, you know, you go through, and then this was the point where Colonel Packard really starts going apeshit. Yes, and I have to say that because it's a Kong movie. You know, he starts losing it, and he starts saying like, "Oh, we're gonna kill."
I think he lost it. I think he snapped. I think he lost it as soon as he saw his men getting killed by Kong. You know?
Oh yeah, he wanted to kill. Well, actually, the way Samuel Jackson described it,
I think he broke. That's when and where he broke.
Oh yeah, the way they explained it, the way Samuel Jackson actually explained it was that it was basically like the story of Moby Dick, you know, where Colonel Packard was basically Ahab and Kong was the white whale kind of thing. Like that's
a good way of putting it. I couldn't have put that myself.
Yeah, to Samuel Jackson, like that's how he explained it on the making of.
I think I think I even saw in an interview one time with Samuel L. Jackson. You know, oh yeah, he still has respect for Kong, but he just still wants to kill it.
Yeah, exactly. And then Colonel Packard, that's all he wants to do, like for this whole fucking movie. And then he goes to find, like, they go to the chopper, like the Sea Stallion chopper where Jack Chapman was. Well, they find out he died in the Skullcrawler scene. They find out he got eaten, which really sucks. You know, I really did like him. You know, you grow emotionally attached to him because throughout the movie,
it's like Attack on Titan. You know, you have to try and not invest yourself with the characters and just immerse yourself with the story. But the characters are just too fucking likable.
Exactly, and also the thing about what made Jack Chapman a lot more likable is the fact that he was writing this letter to his kid, Billy, and you hear all the soldiers say this "Dear Billy" thing. Like, I honestly think that was a very symbolic thing in the movie because every soldier was saying like, "Dear Billy, this place is hell." You know, "Dear Billy, have you ever thought maybe I should fly? Maybe if I see a hurricane, I should fly straight into it." You know, and they kept doing this whole thing. And then when Jack Chapman died, it has that emotional impact because his notebook and his knife are still hanging on this tree, are still hanging on one of the paper trees. Oh, and speaking of that, one animal I didn't talk about, the spore mantis, which is a literal living tree. It's a giant stick bug. It's a stick bug on steroids. Like, this thing is a literal giant stick bug, which is kind of crazy. I mean, the CGI for that thing done by Industrial Light and Magic, that thing looked like it was really there. You know, that stick bug, the spore mantis actually looked like, that is probably the most real looking monster out of this whole movie. You know, to be perfectly honest with you. But what's that? But, you know, you have this whole emotional impact, and then Colonel Packard, you know, they find the Sea Stallion, they get all the ammo from this thing, and then they basically call Kong out. They call him back out so they can, good God, like, they dump napalm into the water, and, well, actually before that, I gotta mention the emotional connection between Brie Larson's character, Mason Weaver, James.
I really tried not tearing up at that part. There's a couple of emotional impactful moments in the film that do tug your heartstrings a little, and they do make you tear up a little. But like with this scene, you know, where Conrad and Larson are face to face with my boy Kong, you know, and Larson has the courage, you know, to step forward and place her hand on Kong's muzzle, I think you'd call it.
Yeah, and you said that she actually, Brie Larson improvised that, and she pictured, like, touching an elephant. And she said she's picturing...
Because
and you
she does something along the lines of, like, imagining something that's there, that's so huge and can, like, end your life in just, like less than a second if it really wanted to. But no, this thing is so gentle, and
you can see that in Kong's face. Actually, you can see like he walks up to him looking a little pissed off, and then all of a sudden you see his eyes like soften up. When Mason Weaver was petting him, basically, was basically touching his nose. And then all of a sudden, you know, the soldiers call him out, and they dump napalm into this lake, which pisses Kong off even more. And then, you know, you just see, like, he gets taken down for a bit, like, Kong actually, like, he gets singed, which you had to, I mean, you can easily feel Kong's pain. I mean, he literally ran into a big-ass fire. Like, he literally ran into flames, and he's all, like, trying to blow the fire away with his hands and trying to wave the fire off. But then it's like he
that's never an easy part to watch. Like, I had to look away a couple of times.
Yeah, and then but then when he falls, there's one character that Kong steps on in that scene. This scientist character, Woodward. The Landsat guy. I was liking him. I kind of was liking him too, and then Kong just steps on him out of nowhere. Like, why did you kill him off? Like, why'd he die? The hell was he doing? He didn't do shit to nobody. Exactly. Like, that poor guy just gets stepped on. And then when Kong,
that's easily one of the most merciful ways to go, though, getting crushed by Kong. Because once something that heavy falls on top of you, it's just
you're dead. Like, you're dead in like less than a second. You wouldn't be able to feel it because the force would knock you out. So you wouldn't be able to feel it. It's just like that. It's over and done with. Exactly. And then